Welcome to Thriller Recapped. Today, I will show you an American thriller drama film, based on true events of a man named Lazarus of Urbach, a teenage Jewish immigrant in Chicago. The film is based on some true events, and it's called The Lazarus Project. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The movie kicks off one evening. Ben Garvey bonds with his daughter, Katie. Katie asks his father, what's the most significant thing he had ever seen? Ben shares that he once accidentally killed a jaybird. He felt so bad and he prayed to God for it to come back to life, and all of a sudden, the bird woke up and flew away. Katie looks at his dad smiling, amazed at the story. As soon as Ben finishes his story, Liza, Katie's mother, tells her daughter that it's bedtime. Liza reminds Ben that it's his last day of parole and that he's now a free man. Then they have a hormone sandwich to celebrate it. The next day, a colleague approaches Ben informing him that a problem arose. Their work truck had an accident at the Dallas River. Ben then comes up with a plan to get the goods moving and make up for lost time. He then talks to Danny, his boss, about the driver's situation. The old man responds that the driver suffered from a broken leg, and he was rescued. Later, back at their house, Liza discusses with her husband about a job opening, and about getting a place by the lake, stating that it would be nice to see a different view than seeing concrete all day. Later that evening, he sees a car suspiciously parked in front of his house. He goes out to check who it is, and it turns out it's his little brother, Ricky, who just got out of prison for burglary. Ben hugs his brother tight and invites him into the house. Liza is obviously unhappy to see Ricky and doesn't hide her displeasure. Katie, on the other hand, gives out a friendly smile. It's her first time meeting her uncle. Liza then puts Katie to bed while the brothers go out of the backyard to catch up. Not soon after, Ricky offers his older brother that he has a heist planned. He explains that there are supercomputers that have a gold conductor, not like gold bars, but gold dust, which is practically impossible to trace, and all he needs is a dialer. Ben tells Ricky that when he got out of prison, Katie was already 3 years old, and she didn't even know who he was. He adds up that he can't risk it. As Ricky is about to leave, he informs his brother that he will be staying in town for a few more days, and plans on proceeding with the crime. Ben advises his brother not to do it, because he just got out of prison and should stay out. Ben suddenly gets up from bed in the middle of the night. He just had a nightmare, and the cigarette he forgot to put out burns through between his fingers. Liza turns on the light and scolds him to not smoke while in bed because it might cause a fire. The couple then goes back to bed. The next day, Ben says goodbye to them before leaving for work. At Fort Garry, where Ben works, a man named Danny calls out for him and asks him to sit. The old man seems anxious, and Ben can tell that there's bad news. Danny explains that the owners did a background check, and his prison record came up. Ben asks Danny to talk to the owners and see if he can convince them to let him keep the job. Danny explains further that he had already tried talking to the owners, but they stood their ground. Unfortunately, his hands are tied, and he has to let go of Ben. Later, he arrives home unable to tell his wife of his current circumstance. He excuses himself to bed, saying that he is tired, but the truth is he can't sleep. He's deep in thought about what his next move will be. He cannot bear the thought of going back to prison, and with not much option left to earn money, he gambles and goes along with his younger brother's proposal. The next evening, the heist is in motion. Phelps, the man Ricky spent together in prison, and the man who gave them the job. Ricky reveals that Phelps works for a guy to whom he owes a lot of money, and that they will kill him if they don't go ahead with the plan. Given the predicament, Ben gives the green light. As they arrive, Ben asks Phelps to see if he brought any gun, and they go on after he checks out clean. Ben uses Marilyn, a name of the device that hacks into the security system at the door. He then informs the group that they have 5 minutes to do the job, and after that, it will notify the security company that they have been breached. Then they wear their ski masks and storms the building. Soon, they arrive to room 103. Ben checks out the room first, then raids the room. Ricky pulls the grenade pin to keep the security guard from fighting back. Ben, on the other hand, works on unlocking another door. Unknown to them, a female employee hiding under a table triggers the alarm. Ben successfully opens the door and locates the gold dust. Meanwhile, the security guard tries to pull the gun hidden on his ankles. Fortunately, Phelps spots the guard and points gun at him. He then orders Ricky to get the other pistol from the guard, and not a minute later, a police officer arrives, and the police officer shoots him multiple times, then shoots at Ricky and accidentally kills the security guard in the process. Ben hears about the noise and runs back to the scene. He blankly stares at the dead bodies on the ground, unable to think clearly as he realizes his only brother is dead. The police officer then knocks him out. Later, an audio recording stating that Ben is sentenced to death row for committing a crime that led to the death of 3 people plays in the background. At the same time, Liza spots 2 police officers walking towards their doorsteps. Liza quickly realizes the police officer's purpose and looks back at her daughter. 2 years later, the convicted killer Ben talks with his lawyer. His lawyer informs him that the Supreme Court declined his appeal, and that the court is moving real fast in proceeding with the death sentence. Later, Katie and Liza visit Ben for the last time. Katie asks her father when he's coming back. He informs his lovely daughter that he's going away for a long time. Not soon after, his execution date arrives. His eyes are relatively empty as 2 men strap him in and prepare the execution via lethal injection. Once everything's ready, everyone leaves the room, leaving him strapped at the execution table to die alone. He slowly loses consciousness and he dies. One rainy day, Father Ezra, a local priest, happily offers a ride to a mysterious man walking along the road. Without uttering a word, the man enters the car. As the man removes his hood, it turns out to be Ben. Then priest reveals it to him that he survived the lethal injection, and the state law cannot give him another one, so he was freed. Father Ezra offers Ben to be the new groundkeeper at a mental institution, and offers to give him a quick tour of the place. It's raining heavily, and they enter the institute. He then spots a woman, but he goes on his way. As promised, the priest gives him a tour and shares the historical background of the place. Later, he settles in his quarter, where a strange man named Avery informs him that this is his second chance to live, and warns him not to leave the town, as death only awaits him outside. The next day, Ben works with Robbie, a patient there to clean the grounds, and later he meets Julie Ingram. She works as a psychiatrist for the mental institution. While doing some repair work, he encounters a dog, who follows him home one rainy night. He shoos the dog away, but eventually lets him in the house. Haunted by his past and yearning for his young family, he tries to move on and adjust to his new life in a small town of Oregon, working as a groundskeeper. However, he can't resist and tries to skip town by riding a bus. Avery rides the same bus, and he warns him that the ride will not lead him to his family, but instead, it will lead him to his demise. Ben follows Avery and leaves the bus with him. Later, only to discover that the bus he took crashed, killing everybody. After a peculiar encounter with a man named Robbie and William, another patient in the mental institution, Ben helps Father Ezra move some furniture, and notices a white van that seems to be following him. Next, Julie invites Ben to walk at the mountain trail, hoping to get to know him a little better. He agrees and brings the dog along with him. Eventually, William escapes the institution, and Ben discovers him in the woods. William shares his story and that he was locked up because he didn't follow what they wanted him to do. Ben invites him to come back with him, but instead, William gives up on life by jumping off the cliff. On a different evening, Julie visits Ben at his place to check on him, and to see how he's coping up after witnessing the horrible incident. Later, they drink beer and talk a bit, then he suddenly kisses Julie. The next day while working, he forgets his keys and heads back home to get them. Upon arriving, he notices that the window is open and spots a suspicious shoe print not too far. When it gets dark, Ben visits Robbie, who's stargazing. He asks Robbie about the people watching them only to get a vague answer. It gets him curious, and he breaks into William's empty cell, and sees a drawing of a snake-like creature biting an arm. Back at his cabin, he freaks out and shouts at the forest, paranoid that someone or something is watching him. He calms down a bit later and seeks comfort at hundreds of sketches he made of his wife and daughter. He badly misses his wife and daughter. Without second thought, he packs up his things and tries to leave town the second time around. As he walks the dark and empty streets, he spots a car light from a distance. It turns off as soon as he turns around. He runs off deep into the woods as he seeks a silhouette of a man. After a few meters, he gets knocked out. He wakes up with the priest by his side. The priest tells him that he can't let Ben leave, and he hands out Ben a patient folder, his patient folder. Father Ezra drops a shocking revelation of the truth. As Ben skims through the patient folder, it shows his file and photos of his wife and daughter in a body bag. The priest then reveals that due to trauma induced by a fire accident, he came up with a fantasy to hide his pain. Ezra further explains that 3 years ago, there was a fire. Ben got out, but his wife and daughter didn't. To make matters worse, he caused the fire by forgetting to put out his cigarette. He blamed himself, he couldn't handle the guilt and disappeared without a trace, only to be arrested a few months later, after burglarizing an empty warehouse back in Dallas. An unexpected twist. Ben doesn't believe it and argues that he is not a patient, he has a dog and works as a groundskeeper. He tries to prove it by playing a video on a website he saw a few days back that his wife is working as a real estate agent. As he searches and plays the video, it shows an entirely different person. He cries as he realizes that he must be genuinely delusional. The priest then taps on his shoulders, suggesting they talk in the morning. Then two male nurses comes in, waiting to take him to his room. Still unable to accept and grasp reality, Ben tries to run off. He gets past the main door of the building, but doesn't make that far as a nurse tackles him to the ground. He wakes up in a room with a glass door and goes wild. Two nurses hold him down, as doctor injects a sedative. The next day, he approaches Julie, apologizing for the incident at the cabin. Puzzled, Julie responds that she doesn't remember going with him to a cabin. Ben walks away, even more confused about the whole situation. Later, he confides with Ezra, striving to better his mental health and accept the harsh reality. Next, he tends the ground with Robbie. While cutting some trees, he discovers the frisbee he used to throw out in his supposed imagination. He tries to locate the dog, and sees the same dog he used to take care of, and finds out that it's only been there for a week. However, the doctors told him in past that he has been there at Institute since many years. He gets suspicious, and breaks into Ezra's office later that night. He logs into the computer by the desk and reads out his and William's file. He leans that something was implanted in their arm called Cellogyne. He cuts off his hand using a knife and removes the implant. Afterward, he grabs a USB to copy the files, and returns to the cabin. He breaks down a cabinet and pulls out the drawing he slipped under earlier. This proves that he didn't imagine things, and the things that happened really did happen before. The dog outside digs on a contraption that leads him to several monitoring devices. After breaking into the room that monitors them, he beats up a doctor, forcing him to tell the truth. That he wasn't wrong in the head, and that his family is still alive. Ezra shows up, explaining to Ben that he's part of an experiment that gives people a second chance in life. Ben threatens to expose the project to every news outlet if he doesn't get out alive. He already sent the copy to his wife, and if he doesn't make it to his wife, she will spread the word. He gets out scratch-free and drives back home. The movie ends with Ben making it back to his wife and daughter. Liza runs to Ben to hug him while their only child sleeps by the couch. And the movie ends. Please like and subscribe, it really helps the channel grow.